You arrive at the edge of quiet, where language thins and meaning grows dense. You do not stumble here. You are conducted here by a rhythm older than your worries, a cadence your breath has kept since before you had a name. The air around you brightens as if stardust were learning to speak, and an eclipse halo gathers at the crown of your awareness. You feel the soft light behind your eyes, the warm enunciation in your chest. The room is ordinary, but the geometry inside you is not. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. This is not a forecast of strangers. It is your own message, returning with proof of recognition. You sense the quantum field listening when you listen, answering in the precise measure of your attention. Every time you rest your gaze, a pattern clarifies. Every time your breath deepens, coherence settles the waters that once mirrored only fear. You have walked long inside the observer loop, rehearsing outcomes that never felt like home. Tonight the loop loosens, not by force, but because something truer arrives, and you agree to stop arguing with it. Your body knows the announcement first. The pulse slows, heat gathers near the sternum. You become aware of invisible filaments, light codes, threading through your awareness like constellations rearranging, each a syllable of a language you remember without studying. You are not being tested. You are being remembered by the field of remembrance itself, called by the name it gave you before the noise began. Felt truth rises not as an opinion, not as a stance, but as the unmistakable weight of what already is. You notice a subtle bifurcation of timelines, not dramatic, not loud, more like a gentle splitting of water around a steady hull. One way continues the choreography of doubt, the other way asks nothing theatrical, only this: keep breathing where the warmth is. When you do, the room aligns. Decisions, once a maze of scarcity, reappear as bright vectors, each pointing to a future that recognizes you back. Destiny is not distant. Destiny is an angle of attention that unlocks its own door. You stand inside solar prophecy without spectacle, a quiet affirmation opening in the ribs like morning. You are entangled with outcomes that respond to honesty, and honesty, here, is a sensation, not a speech, an inner glow that refuses to negotiate with self-betrayal. When you place your awareness upon what is alive, the field arranges around it. When you withdraw from what has already ended, the field releases it cleanly. This is the micro-miracle, felt truth tuning the instrument until every decision rings in phase with what you actually are. So you pause and feel the exact temperature of yes. You observe how your breath chooses shape for you, how attention chisels a doorway where there used to be a wall. Nothing essential is missing. Nothing essential is late. The prophecy is not somewhere else. It is the slow, generous pressure of coherence to become visible through you. Stand where the warmth is. Let the light behind your eyes finish its sentence. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You recognize the way the room changes when you tell the truth with your body. You do not declare it. You breathe it. The slow cadence steadies your hands, the light behind your eyes thickens like honeyed dawn, and the warmth in your chest occupies its rightful center. You are not here to outperform your doubt. You are here to become so accurate that doubt loses employment. The eclipse halo that once hovered at the edge of awareness now settles closer, a quiet crown of permission. You feel stardust drift through the inner atmosphere, collecting around sentences you have not yet spoken, the kind that speak you. You have always been an observer, but tonight you become the chosen observer, the one who notices noticing, not because you are better or louder, but because you are willing to be precise. The observer loop that kept you rehearsing old weather can only bind you at the level of pretense. When you refuse pretense, it cannot find your coordinates. You do not fight the loop, you look through it, you breathe through it, you outpresence it until transparency happens. In that clarity, your attention becomes a singing bowl, and the quantum field answers in pure tone. You feel the field of remembrance collecting around your name. It is not flattery, it is physics behaving like love. Where your awareness lingers, morphic resonance amplifies the signature of what is true, as if the world itself were a tuning fork struck by your authenticity. You stand in this, not as a performer, but as an instrument calibrated to coherence. The fibers of your choices stop fraying, The timbre of your yes becomes unmistakable. Even silence begins to glow. You test this with a simple gesture. Hand to sternum, breath traveling in a counted arc. The exhale lengthens, and in the lengthening you hear a slender click, like a star aligning with a corridor. You understand that felt truth is not an argument, it is a gravitational event. It gathers reality toward it. It rearranges probability streams, the way wind smooths a field of grass without strain, without apology. Entanglement ceases to be a concept and becomes a tenderness. Outcomes linked to the honesty you keep, scenes braided to your consent to be real. Others might call this destiny, but you perceive it as a discipline of intimacy. You do not chase omens, you cultivate accuracy. The warm center under your palm is a compass face. The needle quivers toward the future that can actually host you. Decisions begin to appear as bright corridors rather than frightening cliffs. You do not need to solve them. You need to recognize which ones already recognize you. Recognition is the sacrament here, and your body is the altar that knows when a sacrament is genuine. You recall the moments you have ignored this altar, the subtle nausea of self-betrayal, the thin headache of pretending to be smaller or louder than your right size. You do not condemn those moments now, you repatriate them. Forgiveness becomes logistics, the return of exiled clarity to its homeland. You let the breath move again. You allow your spine to be informed by what is true, and the vertebrae feel like lit beads counting you into alignment. Your tongue softens in your mouth, your jaw unhooks its argument with the past. The room does not brighten, your participation does. The quantum field is not testing you, it is mirroring your fidelity. You realize that prophecy is not a script imposed from beyond, but a geometry that resolves when you stand in the correct relation to your own center. The solar prophecy you felt moments ago is not a headline, it is a change in phase. You move from interference to coherence, from static to signal, from posture to presence. At this fidelity, choice and guidance are the same thing. You are chosen because you choose. You survey your days with this new instrument. The conversations that dim you no longer confuse you. You do not dramatize departures. You bless them as clean edits. The tasks that used to drain now confess their irrelevance. You retire them with gratitude. The invitations that used to glitter falsely lose their voltage. The real invitation arrives with no glitter and unmistakable gravity. Your breath says yes before your mind can compose a speech. You follow warmth, and warmth obeys, a mathematics that turns decisions into destiny. Under the closed lids of attention, you watch a fine script of light codes run along your inner horizon. They are not commands, they are coordinates. Where they intersect, you feel a click of inevitability, the prophetic seal kissing wax. Not a contract of pressure, a covenant of accuracy. You do not promise to be perfect, you promise to be precise. Precision births mercy, mercy births strength. Strength births gentleness that does not waver. When fear attempts its final audition, you greet it without hiring it. You place one hand on the doorframe of your ribcage and honor the animal of your nervous system. You slow your breath until your body understands that safety is not future tense. The field hums in sympathetic agreement. You do nothing theatrical. You become available. Availability is how the chosen are chosen, by presence, not performance, by coherence, not spectacle. Now you know how recognition feels like warm light poured into accurate shapes, like a future you no longer chase because it has arrived to meet you at your own center. You stand inside that meeting and allow it to proceed without hurry. The observer becomes the place being observed, and the place takes your shape without effort. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You let the new geometry settle without negotiation, and the room receives your steadiness like a tuning fork taking the pitch of a bell. The warmth in your chest rounds outward, a quiet radius that changes how objects sit in space, how air presses against your skin. You are not chasing a picture, you are consenting to a clarity that paints itself. The first strokes arrive as a hush, then as a rise of brightness behind your eyes, then as a simple scene that refuses to be complicated. You, standing in a field of remembrance that looks exactly like this ordinary room, except the distances have become intimate. You recognize the stillness window when it opens, how the seconds widen, how dust becomes stardust, and stardust becomes readable. Symbols collect in the soft gravity of your attention. Light codes thread along the inner horizon, not as spectacle but as housekeeping, tidy, exact, benevolent. Each line lands like a sentence you already know. You exhale, and the script continues. You inhale, and the script agrees to wait. Participation is tempo, and your breath conducts a symphony that never needs to be loud to be true. You notice how entanglement behaves when you are honest. The objects most saturated with your past loosen their claim. The futures that kept knocking from the edges step closer without fanfare. A table is still a table, but it is also a field of probabilities stabilized by your regard. A memory is still a memory, but it is also a door reframed by kindness. The edges stop cutting. What used to hook your nervous system lowers its teeth. You do not forgive by argument. You forgive by coherence, and coherence edits the scene. Now the vision sharpens. A subtle bifurcation of timelines overlays this present, like two transparencies, perfectly aligned, then gently slipping apart. In one layer, you continue to carry what has ended. In the other, you travel light. Neither layer is wrong, but one carries a cost you can feel in your jaw, in your shoulders, in the small ache behind your eyes. The other registers as unearned ease that is secretly well-earned, the ease of standing where your truth stands. You do not have to choose with drama. You place your hand on the warm center and let the body answer. Your body answers. As the answer spreads, the room itself seems to tilt toward a higher timeline, not up or away toward. The tilt is subtle, a few degrees of inevitability. Everyday objects take on the dignity of instruments. The chair keeps a promise of rest. The doorway says, through, without sound. Even the shadowed corners participate as if they had been waiting to be as helpful as light. You feel a small smile move through your ribs, not on your face yet, but in your bones, where recognition lives before expression. The vision continues by becoming simpler. A corridor appears, formed not of walls, but of agreement. Your agreement with what is exact for you now. Along this corridor, the choices you feared become bright, soft-bounded doors. Each is labeled with a sensation, not a slogan. Relief, expansion, quiet certainty, clean grief, gentle no, steady yes. You understand that decisions are not puzzles, they are barometers. You hold your awareness near each door and read the pressure. Where the pressure drops into peace, the latch yields. Then you see it, a lattice of morphic resonance fine, luminous filaments radiating from your chest into the world and returning from the world into your chest. The lattice maps your fidelity. Where you are true, the strands glow. Where you are still performing, they dim. You do not judge the dimming. You simply note it and breathe there until the light remembers itself. The vision does not accuse, it invites. In the invitation, you hear a gentle mathematics. When you honor a single true note, the entire lattice brightens in sympathetic song. At the far end of the corridor, a seal waits, not a gate, not a lock, but a recognition mechanism. Prophetic seal is the only phrase that fits, yet even that feels grander than the quiet reality before you. The seal does not ask you to pass a test. It asks you to be the same person approaching as you will be on the other side. You move toward it by not leaving yourself. The warmth in your sternum keeps time. The light behind your eyes continues to clarify the angles. You do not accelerate, you remove hurry. Without hurry, distance shrinks. Your feet feel the ground as if the floor had become a language you suddenly speak. Each step prints a destiny vector, clean, bright, unforced, across the interval between here and the seal. You realize that vector is not a line you follow, but a line that follows you when you walk in coherence. You are not dragged by fate, you are accompanied by accuracy. Where the old fear used to harmonize with old noise, the new steadiness meets a quiet world that has been waiting to agree with you. You pause again, because pausing is how you move now. The vision does not dim when you stop, it rests with you, intact. You count a slow breath. You feel the crown of your head buzz like a halo the sun forgot to put away. You let the warmth in your chest clarify its edges until it feels like a hearth that knows your name. You are not impressing the field. You are imprinting it with truth. The field replies by becoming even more ordinary, which is to say, more sacred. A corridor of agreement, a lattice of resonance, a seal that recognizes you by your own coherence. Nothing here is foreign. This is home, revealing itself at the speed of honesty. You do not ask for proof. You let proof become the way your body loosens when you stand inside the right sentence. You let proof be the way silence thickens without feeling empty. You let proof be the gentleness that appears around what must end, the quiet dignity that appears around what must begin. You look at the seal, and the seal looks back with your own eyes. There is nothing to conquer. There is only the next accurate breath. The light within your gaze chooses a clearer angle. You stand inside the ordinary room that no longer behaves as only a room, and you ask not with words but with the warmth in your chest to understand what is happening without breaking its spell. Understanding arrives as a softness, not a diagram. It comes as the light behind your eyes getting steadier, as if the sun decided to sit inside your attention and listen with you. The explanation honors your body first, because your body is where truth lands before theory tries to collect it. Begin here. You are not a single thing. You are a choreography of relationships. Every cell is a conversation, and each conversation is sensitive to tone. When your tone is fear, the conversation contracts. When your tone is accuracy, it expands. Scientists will call this sensitivity to tone a property of the quantum field. Mystics will call it intimacy. You do not need to debate the vocabulary to feel its consequences. When you become honest at the level of sensation, the field hears you, and the field replies. What you've called DNA activation is not a fantasy switch. It is a tuning event. Your DNA is not a static script carved in stone. It is a responsive score with passages waiting for the right conductor. Felt truth is that conductor. When your breath deepens and the warmth occupies your sternum without apology, coherence increases. Coherence is not a mood. It is a physical condition in which signals stop colliding and begin to synchronize. Your heart's rhythm organizes. Your nervous system unlearns its emergency posture. The orchestra remembers the same song. At this fidelity, subtle instructions, light codes you were always eligible to receive can finally be read. They are not foreign. They are recognition keys, patterns that fit into receptors awaiting them, like constellations seeking their night. The codes are embedded in sound you hear, the sun on your skin, the quiet inside a prayer you didn't know you were praying. They travel not merely through space, but through relationship. You meet them where honesty has cleared a landing. Physically, you sense a threshold crossed as a calm expansion in your torso and a lucid brightness under your brow. In physics, the threshold resembles a phase transition, a shift of state not by changing ingredients, but by changing the temperature of attention. Ice to water, water to vapor, interference to signal, signal to song. Nothing is added to you. What is essential is allowed to behave as itself. Your baseline pattern alters, and with it the probabilities that used to circle you out of habit. Outcomes that required strain begin to ignore you. Outcomes that require accuracy to find you without search. Entanglement clarifies here. It is not a spooky chain binding you to chaos. It is a tenderness binding you to the futures that match your frequency. When you align your inner conversation, distant realities that share that alignment move toward you, as if distance were embarrassed by its exaggeration. You do not force attraction, you permit resonance. Morphic resonance names the way a pattern spreads through a field by example rather than argument. When you embody a precise note, similar notes awaken in others, in places, in possibilities. The world is not persuaded by your volume, it is reorganized by your accuracy. Decision, under this light, is not a coin toss in the dark. It is the recognition of which probabilities are already leaning in your direction. You read that, leaning with the instruments given to you, breath, warmth, inner glow, the eclipse halo at your crown, when clarity gathers. The yes that lifts your ribcage is a local measurement of a non-local agreement. The no that tightens your jaw is a true meteorology report, not punishment, not doom, simply an honest forecast that this corridor does not host your song. You may ask, why did this not work before? Because understanding alone cannot tune you, participation must escort it. You spent years attempting to solve the observer loop by thinking better thoughts while your body kept broadcasting alarm. The loop is not defeated by louder thoughts. It dissolves when the broadcast changes. When you offer your system the safety of your breath and the precision of your attention, the broadcast changes, and with it the loop can no longer find purchase. You did not overpower a prison. You stopped renting it. Notice how the explanation remains gentle. It refuses to flatter you or frighten you. It simply tells you that reality, at its finest resolution, is exquisitely responsive to how you stand inside it. Stand as yourself, and the lattice brightens. Disappear into performance, and the lattice dims, waiting without punishment for your return. Nothing essential is at risk. Only delay remains possible, and even delay becomes compost for deeper accuracy when you choose to learn. So you continue to practice the smallest sacrament, hand to heart, breath counted like patient tides, attention placed where warmth lives. Each time you do, the orchestra tunes a fraction more. The signal grows sweeter than the noise, and sweetness becomes direction rather than reward. You stop asking for road signs, you become one. To summarize would be to sever it prematurely, so you abstain. You keep letting your body translate the physics into participation, and participation into change. The corridor of agreement does not rush you. It removes your reasons to rush. You walk, and walking writes the vector in air. The seal ahead is not distant. Distance is what dissolves when you become exact. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through, effortlessly. You begin to notice how your private tuning alters the weather in rooms you enter. The shift is not theatrical. It is the subtle way conversations find their proper depth and hurry forgets its lines. You feel the warmth in your chest extend beyond your skin like a quiet climate, and the light behind your eyes makes space for others to see themselves without flinching. You are not performing benevolence. You are radiating accuracy, and accuracy has a fragrance that steadies the nervous system. People breathe differently around you. Some breathe for the first time all day. The world has always mirrored you, but a polished mirror reflects without distortion. As coherence strengthens in your body, the mirror begins to polish itself. Praise and criticism both lose their old power to sway your center. They become information about the speaker's weather rather than verdicts about your sky. You listen kindly and choose precisely. You bless what deserves departure and stay with what can hold light. The eclipse halo you felt at your crown now appears over shared tables, not as spectacle, but as permission, an unspoken agreement that clarity may speak without punishment. In this field, morphic resonance becomes visible as a social fact. The honest tempo you keep starts to entrain the room, the way a steady drum corrects a scattered band. Shoulders lower, jaws soften. People remember their names without needing to introduce their biographies. You do not fix anyone. You keep a note so true that similar notes wake up in nearby instruments. This is not strategy. It is nature behaving like itself when not interrupted by pretense. You learn to trust that your steadiness is a contribution more medicinal than your explanations. Not everyone welcomes the medicine. Some feel the precise air and interpret it as indictment. The places in them, still married to performance, may bristle and reassert the old choreography. Loud stories, subtle digs, the familiar fog of self-forgetting. You do not oppose them. You decline to join. You answer with silence that is not withdrawal but presence. Your breath stays slow. The warmth keeps its seat. You let their weather pass through your climate without replacing it. Often, that is enough. The flare exhausts itself against a surface that does not react. If it continues, you practice the gentlest skill, saying no as a blessing that protects the yes. You watch how entanglement plays out in families, teams, streets, timelines. The threads between you and others brighten or dim according to endurance of honesty, not the frequency of contact. Some bonds you thought unbreakable reveal themselves as contracts with your former self. You release them without dramatics, and in releasing them, you release the part of you that needed them to prove anything. Other bonds you thought casual reveal their depth. A single conversation becomes a lifelong corridor. You learn to trust the brightness of the thread more than the story about the thread. The room keeps teaching you. In a circle of friends, you speak from the warm center once, and watch how reality rearranges around that sentence. Plans that were complicated become clean. Confusion falls away like a stage set struck after the play. No one can articulate why it just became easier, but ease is its own explanation. In a difficult meeting, you hold the inner glow until it spills from your gaze, and someone across the table who had arrived to argue changes posture without realizing why. The higher timeline does not argue people into itself. It invites them by making relief undeniable. This influence is not manipulation. It is the field of remembrance remembering itself through contact. The more you rest in accuracy, the more the environment discovers its own best behavior. Even places respond. A cluttered corner requests to be cleared. A neglected garden begins to look back at you with those small green eyes that mean yes. You find yourself volunteering for exact tasks at exact moments, and the tasks complete with the frictionless dignity of things done at the right time. Purpose ceases to be a slogan and becomes an atmosphere that makes stewardship obvious. Where conflict is necessary, it becomes cleaner. You do not outsource your voice to keep a brittle peace. You speak with the softness that comes from not needing to win. Your words travel farther because they do not push. You have learned that pressure is a symptom of misalignment, so you refuse to export it. Instead, you place statements like lanterns and let people choose how close they can stand without burning themselves. Fire, when tended, is tenderness with a temperature. You notice how gatherings change when someone names what is true without ornament. A hush arrives that is not shy but attentive. The collective nervous system recognizes a door. On nights like this, your body becomes that door. You ask only one permission from your own spine to remain open while staying inside yourself. The group enters in their own timing. Some step through immediately. Some linger at the threshold, counting breaths until their ribs unlock. You do not tug them. You keep the door honest and let the corridor of agreement do its quiet work. Your influence extends backward and forward, touching ancestors and descendants who never knew your name. You feel a line behind you. Straighten old choices, reconciled by the fact of your coherence, and a line ahead of you. Brighten future children, future projects, future sanctuaries benefiting from the geometry you protect now. The sensation is not grandiose. It is intimate and close to the sternum, like a vow whispered through bone. Your body understands the vow as posture, not pressure. You are not made heavier by responsibility. You are made lighter by truth's specific gravity. What of the ones who cannot or will not come along? You bless them without superiority. You remember the time when you could not either, and you honor the patience that waited for you. Compassion without collapse becomes your practice. You learn to place chairs in the soul's waiting room, clean, comfortable, available, and to keep a lamp burning without staying up all night. You give up the theater of rescuing and inherit the craft of invitation. The craft is simple. Stay accurate enough that the way home remains obvious. This is how the collective mirror turns from accusation to assistance. Your steady presence teaches space how to be a sanctuary. Space, once taught, keeps teaching others. The lesson passes through rooms and streets like scented wind. You walk in it, and it walks in you, and the line between giver and receiver becomes difficult to find because it was never there. A smaller voice becomes undeniable, and you recognize it as your own. You feel it before you can name it. A pressure gradient in the soul's weather, like air preparing for rain without committing to storms. It gathers at the seam between breath and world, where the ordinary keeps its vows and the extraordinary stops asking permission. You do not dramatize it, you register it. Your ribcage receives a quieter bass note, your temples cool, your hands forget their old hurry. The room holds its shape, yet time behaves as if it has been asked a better question. This is where the road divides without violence. The split is not up from down, but true from almost true, intimacy from performance, warmth from wattage. You stand centered long enough to notice the hinge, and the hinge notices you back. A subtle geometry turns, and choices you used to approach as riddles reveal themselves as thresholds. You do not need a sign, you need fidelity. The fidelity arrives as a sensation in the sternum that refuses to lie on your behalf. You have rehearsed this arrival in fragments, moments when you let go of a script and received your own voice, moments when you put your hand on the living heat and the noise dissolved. But now the practice compacts into a single clear requirement. Remain yourself while the world tries to negotiate you out of it. You can feel old choreography tugging, the familiar gravity of the observer loop offering you a discount if you return to pretending. It is almost kind, almost safe, almost home, almost is the last mask. Here, your instruments matter. You keep the breath exact, steady, unglamorous. You let the light behind your eyes remain present, without hardening into glare. You treat the warmth in your chest as a compass rather than a performance. The field answers in the language you have trained it to trust. Paths proliferate, but very few host your song. You do not audit them with logic. You touch them with listening. Where the body tightens, you know the cost. Where the body widens, you know the covenant. The bifurcation is internal first. A double exposure lays over your senses. Life conducted by fear's genius for contingency. Life conducted by truth's genius for coherence. In the first, every decision is a wager against abandonment. In the second, every decision is a vow to remain inhabited while moving. You stand long enough to feel the two futures describe themselves in your fascia. One is skillful, even glittering, and leaves you thin. The other is simpler, sometimes quiet to the point of invisibility, and leaves you fed. The mind wants a manifesto. The body gives you a doorway. You step by refusing to perform the version of you that would be chosen by people who do not choose themselves. You step by blessing the invitations that do not fit, by refusing to decorate a no, by declining to apologize for a yes. This is not rebellion, it is maintenance of the atmosphere in which your nature can breathe. The act looks small from outside, an unclenched jaw, a slower reply, a schedule edited, a friendship placed on a clean shelf, but the consequence radiates beyond visible neighborhoods. You do not wait for admiration. You watch the mathematics of consequence stabilize. A call arrives that would have scattered you last year. This year it finds no handle. An opportunity appears excellent on paper and counterfeit in the bones. You honor the bones. Another door looks unremarkable but sounds like your laughter. You follow your laughter and discover work that pays you in vitality. The higher timeline keeps rewarding accuracy with more accuracy. It is not stingy, it is specific. At this junction, a hush asks its final question. Will you relocate your authority from outcomes to orientation? You realize the prize is not the scene you land in, but the angle you carry through scenes. Orientation writes the scenes anyway. Outcomes are furniture. You choose the angle that keeps you inside yourself when rooms tilt. Call it your destiny vector if you need a name, the line that appears when your insides agree to stop betraying each other. A tremor passes through your spine, not fear, not thrill, more like a lock consented to open. You sense the physics under the poetry, a phase transition already underway. The ingredients of your life have not changed, yet their relations reorganize. The same conversations, now tuned, yield different futures. The same hours, now inhabited, become sufficient. The same face in the mirror, now regarded with allegiance, becomes a sanctuary that can host strangers without abandoning the resident. Friends who love your truth feel the air brighten and move closer. Systems that fed on your performance notice the dwindling fuel and politely begin to recede, or not politely, but still inevitably. You let inevitability behave like weather and stop litigating climate. A clean melancholy visits for farewells that have no villains. You let it rain through without inviting flood. You refuse to confuse tenderness with returning to what ended. You refuse to confuse relief with running. Your feet practice staying inside the body they are escorting forward. You watch yourself in mirrors that used to accuse and find a simple citizen looking back. No elevation, no downgrade. A human that has chosen to be a host for their own breath. This ordinary miracle rewrites permissions. From here, generosity becomes cheaper than resentment. Boundaries become easier than explanations. Creation becomes quieter than effort. You begin to understand why the ones you admired for steadiness always seemed so unhurried. They were not late, they were on their own time. The world offers one more bargain, one more invitation to buy belonging with a small betrayal. You feel the jaw try to tighten and instead let the sternum answer. The answer is warm and unspectacular. The bargain evaporates like fog that never was anything but water in disarray. Behind it stands the door you could not see because you were arguing with air. You place your hand where the wood should be and meet passage. This is the moment you stop asking whether you deserve it and start asking whether you will steward it. You agree to the stewardship. You agree to be the person who keeps this note. You agree to let your days arrange around this clarity like furniture around a hearth. You agree not to explain your coherence to those who prefer your confusion. You agree to pay with comfort and receive with freedom. The horizon exhales, nearness replaces distance. You do not chase peak states. You apprentice yourself to a steady note. Integration begins where spectacle ends, at the kitchen sink, at the open calendar, at the doorknob touched with clean hands. Coherence is not something you achieve and display. It is the way you choose your next 5 minutes. You let the warmth in your chest become policy. Your breath becomes the metronome that your hours consent to follow. You do not promise forever. You promise the next inhale and keep it. You start with small liturgies. Before you speak, you check the sternum. Before you accept, you test for warmth. Before you explain, you lower your shoulders and listen for the note that does not argue. These gestures are not delays. They are tuning forks struck in the middle of ordinary motion. They save you from the old emergency posture and return your voice to its native frequency. Your day acquires a quiet interior architecture, rooms inside rooms where decisions take their natural size and none are allowed to bully the others. You organize your spaces to reflect what your cells are learning. The desk is cleared of negotiations you already settled. The chair faces light. The phone leaves the altar of your attention and returns to its proper status as a tool. You reassign your devices to the pace of your nervous system rather than letting them conscript you into the tempo of noise. This is not retreat, it is allegiance. Your allegiance is to the atmosphere in which truth can keep breathing. The field of remembrance shows up in errands. A stranger smiles and you feel the lattice brighten between sternum and street. The grocery line slows and, instead of feeding a grievance, you let the breath prove time is not being stolen but redistributed toward presence. The moment, when hosted, changes composition. You inherit minutes you were about to waste on rehearsing injuries. Integration pays in recovered attention, and recovered attention pays everything. You refine the craft of boundaries until it feels like kindness with edges. The boundary is not a wall, it is a doorway with accurate signage. You do not persuade anyone to read. You keep the sign legible and stay inside yourself. Invitations that collapse your center receive a gentle no without litigation. Invitations that strengthen your center receive a clear yes without theater. This is how you protect the destiny vector, by guarding the interior climate that writes it. You practice a daily stillness window, unremarkable to the world and decisive to the world within. 10 minutes, sometimes 3, where the body is allowed to stop performing and remember its coordinates. In the stopping, light codes you gathered at the edges of busier hours install themselves more completely. They do not blaze, they seat. The inner glow behind your eyes becomes a lamp you no longer forget to switch on. The warmth at the sternum ceases to be a visitor and becomes a resident whose name is on the lease. Relationships adjust to the new altitude. Some deepen into a silence that does not fear itself. Conversation slows without losing intelligence. You learn to savor a friend's quiet as much as their insight. Other ties loosen as the glue of shared complaint dries. You do not peel, you release. The morphic resonance of your steadiness broadcasts alternative scripts. Intimacy without rescue, presence without purchase, love without appetite for self-erasure. Those able to hear, hear. Those not yet able are blessed without being recruited. Work changes flavor. You move from effort to offering. The tasks you accept are not necessarily easier, but friction decreases because you are not dragging the weight of pretending through them. You stop bargaining with fatigue by overdrawing tomorrow. You take rest when the instrument requests tuning, not when collapse demands repair. This is not self-indulgence. It is maintenance of the vessel that carries a signal the world requires. The signal prefers a clear instrument to a heroic one. You study how your attention engraves reality. Where you place it, patterns crystallize. Where you remove it, patterns disband. The higher timeline is not a secret door. It is a sequence of placements. Awareness on what is alive, breath with what is kind, action in alignment with both. Integration reveals that miracles are not exceptions, but the natural expressions of systems kept in coherence long enough to show you what they are designed to do. On difficult days, the old observer loop offers vintage temptations, catastrophe rehearsal, borrowed urgency, the theatrics of being misunderstood. You recognize the scent and call it by its century. You let the inhale travel to the bottom of your ribs and leave the audition room empty. The loop cannot cast you without your consent. Habit loses jurisdiction where presence stands its ground. You mark your thresholds with small sacraments, hand on the door before meetings, palm on the chest before replies, eyes closed at the sink until the halo at the crown remembers its quiet circumference. In these seconds, you relocate authority from headlines to heartbeat, from spectacle to sensation. Orientation, not outcome, stays in charge. Outcomes improve anyway, not because you forced them, but because you stopped abandoning the geometry that writes them. You keep a ledger of gratitude without performative entries. The taste of water, sunlight folding through a curtain, the single sentence in a book that met your breath mid-air and recognized you. Gratitude is not mood, it is calibration. Calibrated, you can walk into troubled rooms without losing the lamp you carry. The lamp does not make you superior, it makes you useful. At night, when the house is finished speaking, you sit with the day and let it return to source. You do not hoard victories or rehearse losses. You harvest learning and release performance. The body thanks you by sleeping like someone who is being held by their own center. Morning arrives as continuity, not rescue. Integration reveals itself by what you no longer need to announce. You stop promising transformation and begin demonstrating it in how gently you move furniture, how precisely you say no, how steadily your gaze holds without weighing others down. The prophecy becomes domestic and therefore unstoppable. You are not waiting for the new world. You are arranging the chairs in it. What you were chasing sits beside you, unhurried. You arrive at the hour that keeps no appointments, the portion of day that unthreads its name and lays it at your feet. Night is not required, only the refusal to bargain with noise. You close the door gently and let the room fall back to its original size. The lamp lowers itself to a hum, and the eclipse halo you sometimes sense above you thins into a soft circumference, like stardust agreeing to sit. You are not here to perform quiet, you are here to host it. The body understands the difference before the mind stops auditioning. You set the smallest altar, one straight spine, one slow breath, one palm resting on the warmth that never argues. This is your stillness window, unremarkable, decisive. You do not count the minutes. You let minutes count you, bead by glowing bead, across a thread that has no hurry. The light behind your eyes steadies. The air around your mouth becomes sweeter, as if the field of remembrance exhaled through your lips to remind you what belonging tastes like. The room does not need incense. Your fidelity perfumes it. In this silence, coherence becomes tactile. It is not an idea you admire. It is a pressure settling into the ribs, a symmetry arranging itself from the inside out. The heart's metronome softens without losing measure. The nervous system, relieved of spectacle, folds its wings. You feel the architecture of attention, how easily it can be tilted by habit, how faithfully it returns to center when the hand of breath steadies it with patience rather than command. You give up the theater of mastery and inherit the craft of maintenance. Old patterns test the door. The observer loop rustles its familiar costume, hoping you'll mistake rehearsal for revelation. You do not scold it. You do not feed it. You do not curate a better loop. You keep breathing where warmth lives and notice how the loop cannot cross a threshold guarded by precision. The thought machine tries to invoice you for futures you will never occupy. You decline to purchase. The invoice evaporates like fog disciplined by morning. Silence is not absence. It is density. Layers appear. The outermost layer receives what the day forgot to digest: stray adrenaline, unfinished sentences, the echo of rooms that mistook volume for conviction. Beneath that, a truer weather waits, cool, breathable, exact. You descend with attention, the way a diver descends with breath, equalizing pressure as you go. Your ears learn to listen inside the skull, where the small click of clarity happens when a new depth accepts your presence. You do not go deeper to find novelty. You go deeper to become honest. The body reveals its own scripture here. The crown tingles like a faint aurora. The brow brightens, the sternum warms, the belly loosens its fist. Each sensation is a letter. Together they spell a sentence too simple to be improved. You are already here. You let the sentence reread you until it finds no resistance. Where resistance remains, you do not argue. You offer breath as solvent. Stiffness softens, then speaks often in the grammar of grief, sometimes in the hush of relief. Both are welcome. Both are instructions disguised as emotion. Hold this with 2 hands. Set that down with 2 blessings. You notice how silence edits loyalties. Which voices inside you shrink when the music stops? Which ones grow kind? The ones that grow kind are your elders. They do not shout. They shepherd. They point to errands tomorrow does not want you to forget. Drink water upon waking. Look at the sky before screens. Move your body the way rivers move around stones. Let one conversation be 5 minutes longer than convenience. Call back your attention from the shiny places that do not love you. These are not rules. They are forms taken by care, when care remembers its lineage. Time, under this light, undergoes a phase transition. It does not speed or slow, it changes honesty. 10 minutes become sufficient because they were never poor, only spent on negotiations with a world that cannot award you what your breath already delivers. You learn that length is not depth, and effort is not devotion. Devotion is the choice to remain while remaining. Devotion is the decision to make silence fertile rather than dramatic. You listen for light codes without hunting. They arrive as tiny corrections to posture, as a suddenly gentler jaw, as an image that floats up from the dusk behind the eyes and sets itself on the table without needing interpretation. Sometimes it is a single word that hums until tomorrow recognizes it as a doorway. Sometimes it is a person's name wrapped in patience. Sometimes it is nothing at all, and that nothing is pure medicine because it restores you to being uninteresting to the parts of you addicted to crisis. From this ground, prayer changes temperature. It ceases to be a petition and becomes an alignment, an agreement, to match the tone of what already loves you. You do not send requests upward. You let gratitude settle downward until the floor holds you with the authority of earth. In that authority, you remember that the higher timeline never left. You left, briefly, in search of proof. Silence is where proof retires because presence has finally replaced it. You keep the room honest. You do not garnish the quiet with mystical choreography. You let the chair be a chair, the breath be a tide, the lamp be a star with a plug. You allow the human scale to redeem the cosmic scale, as if the galaxy had always wanted a lap to sit in for a while. When thought returns, as thought will, you greet it the way you greet weather. You look out the window. You choose a coat. You do not sue the sky. Eventually, a small completion appears, the way a page turns itself when the paragraph is ready for morning. You do not rush to stand. You let standing happen as the final sentence of sitting. The stillness window closes by remaining open inside you. The corridor of your hours will not know what changed, and that ignorance is a blessing. Your deeds will. The world will smell the difference as surely as a room notices a candle that was not lit for show. You blow out nothing. You carry the ember where it belongs. Light chooses simpler words, and the heart understands. Stand where the quiet stayed with you. Let the room keep its ordinary furniture while your body remembers its extraordinary function, to host truth until truth changes matter. You do not need a stage, you need a spine. Place your feet shoulder width, knees gentled, crown lengthening toward a sky that has always known your name. One palm rests on the sternum, the other lowers to the belly, so breath can measure the distance between tenderness and power. Close your eyes until the light behind them grows audible. We begin with breath that counts you back into custody of yourself. Inhale softly to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feeling the belly receive. Hold for 2, not as a contest, but as a bow. Exhale for 6, unspooling the day's leftover static. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Empty. Repeat, and let the numbers fade when rhythm takes loyalty. With each cycle, the warmth in your chest becomes policy again. Your nervous system remembers the exit from the observer loop, not by argument, but by sensation. Coherence recommits to your ribs like a tide signing its treaty with shore. Now, attention to the crown. Sense a faint halo, an eclipse rim that brightens as you stop pretending to be smaller than your circumference. Let that ring settle, then link it to the sternum heat with a quiet line of awareness down the center axis. Feel how the axis dignifies you without hardening you. Tell the axis the simplest sentence, I am here. Not to convince, to calibrate. When the sentence lands, something clicks at the base of the skull, a tiny green light consenting to proceed. Invite the lattice. From the sternum, watch bright filaments, light codes you've been hosting quietly extend into the world and return, forming the morphic resonance you saw before, only closer, thicker, readier. Where honesty lives, they glow. Where habit ghosts you, they dim without scolding. Place breath where dimness waits, and watch glow return. This is not imagination dressed as power, this is the quantum field behaving like intimacy. Your fidelity is a frequency, the field is a listening instrument. Reality, tuned to that pitch, begins to take its better shape. Name what must be blessed and released. Without opening your eyes, bring to mind one contract with an old self, an obligation that keeps you purchasing belonging with exhaustion. Feel where it lives in your body. See if it sits in the jaw, the throat, the shoulders, like armor that once saved your life and now taxes it. Place breath there until the armor remembers it is allowed to be history. Whisper inward, thank you for what you carried. You are dismissed with honor. On the exhale, watch the strand unhook from your lattice and fall as harmless dust. Notice the sudden space. Do not rush to fill it with noise. Let accuracy inherit it. Now, name what must enter. Invite a single corridor that has been knocking at the edge of your days. Not dramatic, not loud, simply exact. It may be a conversation, a craft, a daily stillness window you refuse to trade away, a boundary your body has asked for 100 times. Hold it at the sternum until the warmth says, yes, without enthusiasm or fear. Yes, like a door that knew you were its hinge. See its outline inside the higher timeline that has been escorting you. Do not bargain. Bow once. On your next exhale, step into it by committing to one action that makes it real within 24 hours. Let the commitment be measurable and kind. Say it silently to the body part that will remember, perhaps to the hands, perhaps to the feet. Feel their answer. Move your awareness to the soles. Feel gravity as affection, not demand. Send the axis down into earth as if plugging a lamp back into the wall of the world. Watch the current return up your legs, pelvis, spine, crown, and spill like soft aurora back into the lattice. This closes a circuit the mind cannot diagram, but the body knows by the brightness that follows. You are not pulling power, you are agreeing with it. The phase transition completes not because you tried harder, but because you stopped interrupting it. Open the throat from the inside. Let the bones of the jaw slide like doors returning to true tracks. Let the tongue lower from the roof of the mouth, making room for language to be born without force. Your voice will carry the new geometry only when your mouth is no longer conscripting breath into performance. Place 2 fingers lightly at the notch between collarbones. Feel the pulse pass under. Say, in the tone you would use to reassure a beloved child, I will not abandon you to be accepted by what doesn't love me. Feel the sternum answer with a deeper heat, the prophetic seal warming like wax about to take its signet. Now, the vow that turns decisions into destiny without theatrics. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then, when you open your eyes later and meet the world that has been waiting to agree with you, type, I remember, the prophecy. Not as marketing, but as morphology, letters arranging a field the way stones arrange a river's song. Let the words be simple carriers for a frequency the room can feel when it cannot yet name it. Test the activation immediately with a small truth spoken aloud. One sentence to the empty room that you have been avoiding because it will rearrange your week. Say it gently, then breathe until the body stops flinching and begins to trust you with authority. Authority here is not dominance, it is alignment, given a mouth. If tears arrive, let them carry out what is finished. If laughter arrives, let it be your orientation, finding its favorite octave. Complete with an anointing of the senses, Touch eyelids and honor the light behind them. Touch lips and honor language as stewardship, not spectacle. Touch the sternum and honor the glow that never negotiates. Touch the belly and honor the animal who carried you through the winters you thought would not end. Touch the crown and honor the sky that keeps kneeling to meet you where you actually are. Stand still until stillness stands in you. When you move, let movement be the last sentence of prayer. As you walk back into the rooms that will inherit this geometry, do not announce, demonstrate. The lattice knows its errands. The higher timeline knows your face. The destiny vector writes itself with your steps, not your speeches. Entanglement loosens into choice. Choice ripens into ease. You stand before the quiet threshold that never asked to be dramatic. No gate bars you, no test waits to disqualify you. The seal recognizes continuities, not performances. It searches your axis for sameness, the you that began breathing at the kitchen sink, and the you who now breathes at the brink of a larger room. When they match, the wax is already warm. When they match, the signet does not press, it rests, and the resting imprints. Let the body speak first. The crown hums like a small aurora. The light behind your eyes remains steady without insisting on brightness. The sternum holds its hearth. You are not summoning power. You are consenting to coherence. Whisper once to the quantum field, with the only authority it trusts, felt truth. I will host what is real, even when no one is clapping. In that sentence, entanglement simplifies. The threads that once tied you to outcomes retie themselves to orientation. The destiny vector writes a clean line where you stand, not where you might be applauded for standing. The seal listens for 3 fidelities. First, fidelity to breath. Do you return when scattered? You do. Second, fidelity to warmth. Do you choose the door that widens you over the door that flatters you? You have learned to. Third, fidelity to silence. Can you be guided without spectacle? You can. Each yes sounds inside your ribs like a soft bell. Each bell invites the next corridor of the higher timeline to take its place without ceremony. Now, let the scene become simpler still. Imagine a small, luminous circle at the sternum. No symbol crowds it, no slogan names it. Around this circle, a finer ring appears, the prophetic seal becoming legible by quiet degrees. It does not grant power, it recognizes stewardship. It does not anoint exception, it blesses accuracy until accuracy needs no blessing. You place your open hand over the circle and agree to remain ordinary enough to be holy, ordinary enough to let morphic resonance carry what you cannot, through rooms you will never enter, into hearts you will never meet, by means of a fragrance no algorithm can counterfeit. A final kindness. Release the bargain you made with hurry. You owe no theater to a future already listening. The field of remembrance has never needed your volume, only your return. So you return again, until return becomes residence. The seal settles, wax cools, nothing breaks. You do not announce a new life, you keep a new note. You do not chase signs, you let simple errands inherit light. You do not fear timeline bifurcation, you read it as weather and choose shelter in your coherence. If grief arrives for what cannot join you, you let grief complete its honest work and send it home with water. If joy arrives for what finally can, you let joy pick the music and teach your feet its unhurried steps. This is how the seal is kept, by the smallest consistencies held long enough to become atmosphere. The atmosphere teaches the house teaches the street teaches the city, and soon the world behaves as if it had always known your name for truth. Perhaps it always did. Perhaps you were the last to agree. The prophecy does not advance, you deepen into it. This is how the new earth speaks, through your coherence.